off air.
There we go.
There we go. What's up, everybody? Let me get the button straight there. Welcome to another episode of Turn on the Jets TV podcast. I guess that's the right way to say it. I don't know. All I know is this is our podcast at Turn on the Jets TV. This is our third edition. We got a full house tonight with Mr. Dalbin Osorio, staff writer, TOJ.
How's it going, guys?
Mr. Connor Rogers of Turn on the Jets, the Bleacher Report, breaking down the play, and soon to be moving to the tri-state area, I believe, right? Is Hoboken the location? Oh, no, I think he cut out, right? We'll have to hop right over.
He's in Hoboken.
He'll be back. He'll be back. And Cole Patterson of ESPN, Turn on the Jets. And what is the other company you work for? Let's get them. Let's get their shout out.
The graphics.
Oh, yeah. I started writing for Fantasy Pros, and then also Ink Theory Design is my friend's graphic design company.
Excellent. Busy man.
Busy man. Got to bring home the bacon, you know.
You got to do it. You got to do it.
We'll get Connor back once he gets his computer situated. Maybe he'll change out of his Manasquan t-shirt. Not always a pro jersey show. I guess we could be a pro jersey shore show. I don't want to say that. We'll start with reviewing the game last night and then talking a little bit about the upcoming week of practice leading into the Jets-Giants game, and then we'll get to some fan questions at the end. We kicked it out for an extra 15 minutes tonight to get to those questions. So, last night, Jets beat the Bengals 25-17. There was a minor fan apocalypse in the first 10 to 12 minutes of the game with how it started, particularly with Andy Dalton going 8 for 8 for 144 yards with a touchdown. Things settled down from there, and the Jets put together an uneven but far from a disastrous performance. I think, like any preseason game, you probably want to focus a little more on the individuals and the entire units. But I think there was some good, there was some bad, and that's something we'll get into. Obviously, Dalbin, I'll start with you. What do you think was the most positive and the most negative thing to come out of last night?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the most positive for me was the push on the running game. Chris Johnson, who they lined him up in different formations, right? So they lined him up out of the pistol. They had him coming around and to get direct handoffs. I mean, I thought the way they utilized him was pretty impressive. And all the running backs in general and the offensive line, they played much better than they did last week, which I am surprised about because the Colts' run defense is worse than the Bengals. So it was interesting to see that. The negative, I think, for me was the secondary. I think we expected them to play poorly. I didn't expect them to look that bad. And I know that, Milner was out and, we lost McDougal and Patterson, and so Allen was starting on one side. But they made Andy Dalton look really, really good. They made him look really, really good. And somebody ran the stat that, he's completed now 80-something% of the passes the last 2 times he's played us. We've made him look like a $100 million quarterback. So the secondary looked so bad last night, and that's concerning for me going forward.
Connor, now back. He got his computer situated.
Still wearing the shirt, though.
I'm back. Manasquan shirt. Most positive, most negative thing that you saw last night?
Man. Positive, you have to love what Pryor did. I thought that was awesome because it was what he's advertised as. He's a guy that flies around. You just let him roam. You blitz him. He shows a ton of speed at the safety position, which the Jets just never seem to have. So you got to love what Pryor did. I definitely liked what Geno did too. The interception, I rewatched that a couple times now, and I thought a lot of people blamed him, but Nelson's route was just atrocious. He did this half turnaround when he planted his foot. And Geno released the ball a little too quick. He probably should have waited till Nelson was turning his head. But overall, that route is pretty scary if that's your number 2 wide receiver. That was pretty bad. So I thought Geno looked really good too. As for the worst part about last night, you have to be pretty concerned with what's going on at the cornerback position, which is stating the obvious until D. Milner gets back. I think Antonio Allen actually looked a lot better than a lot of people thought he would. One thing I was pleading for was to not leave him on an island with A.J. Green, and what do? They leave him by himself with A.J. Green. I thought that was just poor coaching in general. You don't do that to a guy when you're trying to build confidence at a position switch that he made, and he held up pretty strong. I thought Green pushed off anyway on the one deep ball he had. So, if they're going to call penalties in this league only on the cornerbacks, every team's going to be suffering from that because that's the way they seem to go. They give these offensive guys as much a problem around the league in general. So yeah, that's my takes from last night.
Cole, same question to you. Biggest positive, biggest negative.
All right, I'll try and switch it up a little bit here. My biggest positive I actually took away was the depth of the secondary. At first, obviously at face value, it was not a good night for the Jets secondary. Antonio Allen getting burned over the top by A.J. Green, Kyle Wilson getting burned over the top by Sanu. Andy Dalton's end of stat line is definitely not a good look for the Jets. But in the end, I think I guess the second and third team, they really shaped up, and I was really impressed with what Ellis Langster in particular did. I think you noticed a lot of what was happening.
Go ahead and gloat about it, Cole. You were talking up Langster last week. Had a nice week. Go ahead.
Ellis Island.
No, but I'm being serious though when I say you see all these mistakes, and I went back and I rewatched the tape because I was curious. I wanted to see how he did because you were paying attention to all the times that Kyle Wilson got beat deep in coverage, and I even saw Landry was late on a few things. But Langster held his own, and to be fair, it was against Mohamed Sanu on most of the things, and he's their third receiver, probably a third or fourth receiver on most teams. But Langster impressed, and I thought Walls did a fine job too. He sealed the game with that interception. Not, it was off Matt Scott, but he did it all the same. My biggest negative was Rex Ryan's response to the penalties. It's a preseason game. They have a history with the team. It's understandable. There's going to be chippiness. But he didn't seem perturbed by it, and maybe that's because he thinks they'll have it. It's a problem that'll be solved or that won't rear its head again by the regular season. But you can't have, a player like Willie Colon and Bruno Giacomini getting 15-yard penalties on every other play. Those are going to be drive killers. And the offense, we're hoping for improvements, but they're not going to be good enough to withstand constant 15-yard penalties and setbacks like that.
Yeah, I mean, my initial thoughts on the game, echo a lot of similar things to what you guys said. I think the secondary was obviously concerning. I think if you want to look at it through the glass half full, you say Cryer looked very good in his debut, and when the Jets go out there week 1, week 2, Jaquan Jarrett's not going to be the starting safety. You have to think that Antonio Allen's not going to be the guy playing all the reps outside at cornerback. I was tweeting about this today, what I think the Jets secondary will probably look like, let's say week 2 going into Green Bay, which is obviously going to be their first, big test. No offense to Matt Schaub. Well, maybe offense to Matt Schaub because he's terrible and he's looked terrible all preseason. But I think you're probably going to see Langster and Walls at the one spot on the outside. As of now, it looks like Langster has the leg up on him. Milner hopefully should be back by week 2 at the other corner spot. And then maybe it's Patterson and Wilson kind of rolling through in that nickel spot. Obviously, it's been a rough start to the preseason for Wilson, and he's been inconsistent over the last few years. And we've talked about this a few times where Patterson's skill set probably fits better to being a slot nickel in this defense more so than maybe being on the outside. So maybe when he gets back and healthy, the Jets start working him in the mix there. And then with the safeties, you're going to have Pryor playing with the first-team defense. Allen should be seeing the bulk of his time back at safety. And the Jets are going to do enough 3 safety looks where Landry is going to be in the mix, either rotating through, inserting 2 safety looks, or just be on the field with Allen and Pryor. So it's still not a secondary without questions. They have plenty of questions, and it's still a major area of concern, particularly going against Detroit's passing offense, Chicago's passing offense, Green Bay's passing offense, and the rest of the guys are going to have to face. I also do think a veteran will probably be brought in at some point. I don't think he's going to be a veteran who's going to be someone who comes in and plays 50 reps a game on the outside, but will just be another guy to kind of work through in the rotation. Positives, outside of Geno Smith's interception, I thought he played a very good game. I think there's a really clear difference between the guy we saw at this time last year. He's much more patient and less erratic in the pocket, works through his reads, seems to have a much better feel of when to take off and run, and did a good job spreading the ball around, finished off a touchdown drive with a 1-yard run of his own. I think he was 10 for 13, and you had a drop by Stephen Hill, and then you had the interception to Nelson, which I want to rewatch it. Usually on a play like that, the blame could probably go either way between the receiver and quarterback. It's hard to really know unless we were there in the huddle and know what the play call was. It was just a pretty clear miscommunication and the kind of thing that obviously you want to get out of the way in the preseason. It didn't look like a great route, but again, you can't absolve Geno of any blame on an interception. He gets blamed for throwing interceptions and turning the ball over. But it was encouraging to see him bounce back from that interception and drive the team down the field. And I definitely also want to hit on the running game. And I think, Dalvin, you mentioned this, but the offensive line out of control with the penalties. I think the team had 7 15-yard penalties, which is ridiculous. Yeah. And the bulk of them came from the offensive line, but they did get a very good push in the run game. And Bilal Powell, great timing on Cole's article this week, a guy that continually gets lost in the shuffle. I'm guilty as this as anybody. We spent all this time in the preseason talking about Greg Salas and Stephen Hill and Zach Sudfeld and all these guys, when Bilal Powell is a much, much more important piece of this offense. Mm-hmm. Ivory and Johnson are bigger names, but Powell came in after missing last week, ripped off a 32-yard run, had a touchdown, had a couple nice catches where he broke tackles and fought for extra yards. Really still a very critical piece of this offense. I think we had a couple questions on this, but let's hit on it now, and I'll throw this to Connor. How involved do you think Powell will be on a week-to-week basis on this offense?
It's all about the health of the running backs, because you look at Ivory, who's always banged up, and Powell slides into a more prominent role whenever he's out. When Ivory was out last year, Powell had some of his best games and showed some of his best work. And it's kind of an interesting situation for Powell, because they kind of went and replaced him without getting rid of him this year by adding Chris Johnson, which was a smart move because he brings more of an explosive threat as a third down pass-catching back. But it's going to be there are going to be a lot of split carries on the game. It's just a matter of time for games Ivory's going to miss. And I love Chris Ivory. I think he's a great running back, and I think the Jets can afford to have Ivory on the roster because they have so much depth at the position. When you have Darrell Richardson and Powell, who are both really nice players. I think Powell, when Ivory is healthy, is going to kind of get lost in the shuffle, and I hate to say that because he's been really reliable for the Jets, but I don't really see him getting a ton of carries. I think it would be split probably about pretty even for Chris Johnson and Ivory would probably get about 80% of the carries, while maybe Powell could sneak in 15% of the carries on games like that. But when Ivory's out, Powell should share the workload with Chris Johnson without a doubt because he's shown that he could do everything. And one area that doesn't get glorified is he's the best pass protector on the team out of the running backs. And Geno Smith needs that in a league, and especially a division with so many good edge rushers. You look at New England, you look at Buffalo, and you look at Miami. They all have prominent edge rushers, and they're going to need a guy like Powell to be back there to protect Geno Smith. So that's where he really steps up.
Dalvin, real quick, I want to touch on Darrell Richardson. You wrote a brief article on him this past week on our site, and I think he showed a little giddy up this week. He had a 26-yard gain on a screen and looked good running the ball in the fourth quarter after Alex Green was actually playing in front of him. And Green probably outplayed him in that first preseason game, although I think we're all in agreement that Richardson is probably the superior back and probably merits a roster spot. So maybe just speak a little bit to what you saw from Richardson last night and why he merits a roster spot on this team.
Well, the difference between Darrell Richardson, the Jets have 4 very, very different running backs, right? Like, Darrell Richardson is probably the purest speed back. Like, Chris Johnson is a fast running back, but you'll still see him going in between the tackles. Like, he doesn't like to do it. He likes to bounce it outside, but he can go between the tackles. Darrell Richardson is pure speed. Like, it's really just like you run him and try to get him outside the edges, and he's a game-breaking threat. He did it with St. Louis last year. You carry 4 because they're so different, and because you could see, like, I know Khan said that Bilal would step in if Ivory's hurt, but if you remember when we had Goodson, Ivory, and Powell healthy, Marty played all 3 of them, especially in the Atlanta game. The Atlanta game, I think, is a blueprint for what you're going to see this year, where you're going to see him design plays specifically for Chris Johnson, specifically for Chris Ivory, specifically for Powell, and for Darrell Richardson, because this is a team that lacks speed, and Darrell Richardson brings that. Like, he's the second fastest player on the team after Chris Johnson. Like, it's just pure speed with him.
The dream.
Yeah, listen, he's all right. Other than Hakeem the Dream, right?
Dream.
But no, Darrell Richardson brings an element that the running backs don't really have. It's just pure speed, and I think, especially last night, because Green did outplay him in the first preseason game, but Darrell Richardson's ceiling is so much higher. I actually was surprised when the Rams waived him. Because I just felt like you can never have enough running backs, especially in the division that they play and in the division that we play. Like, you have guys, you have teams who excel at stopping the run up the middle, but they don't have a lot of containment on the outside. And Richardson can present matchup problems going forward. So I think I don't think he did anything last night that hinders his ability to make the team going forward. If anything, I think he solidified his spot. And I know it's sometimes hard to say that after the second preseason game, but I think he's a lock for the fourth running back spot. I don't think there's any doubt.
Cole, Chris Johnson had 10 carries, 63 yards last night. Got around the edge a few times. Showed a little more speed and burst than we saw from him last week. I know you wrote on Johnson both at the fantasy site you're working for now, and then you had touched on Johnson with the scouting report a couple weeks back. Were you encouraged by what you saw from CJ last week? And what do you think is a good kind of average weekly number of touches per week for him in terms of carries and receptions? What should be a target number the Jets are looking for?
I was definitely encouraged by this week. Last week it was.
Uh-oh. Check your mics. Let's see. Can I hear it? Try again. Can we hear you now, Cole?
Can you hear me?
There you go.
Okay. It was clear.
One day.
My bad. So yeah, it was clear last week that he was trying to shake the rust off. But this week I was definitely encouraged by what he had to show. He definitely showed more explosion coming out of his cuts. He looked a little less tentative. Not that he was, entirely playing scared last week, but you could tell he was being a little more aggressive this week. I even liked what he showed in between the tackles when he got out in space as a relief target for Geno, safety valve. That's going to be huge this year. As far as weekly production, I think it's difficult to say because as Connor and Dalbin were touching on before, you're going to have this three-headed attack in the backfield, and Morningweg's probably going to try and scheme to get everyone their touches because they each have a unique skill set that comes in handy depending on the situation provided by the defense or time of game, etc. Health is another consideration there. I think saying that all three of them stay healthy on a week-to-week basis, I would expect them to go probably something like 10 for Johnson, 10 for Ivory, 5 for Powell, and then give or take plus or minus of 2 or 3 on each of those. And I think Johnson's going to see a lot of his time on third down and passing downs. But I also noticed a lot in this game they were running him out of the pistol, and he tended to get a lot of good extra yardage with that head start in the spread. So I think that generally you'll see him get more production in the pass game than the run game, but on a few, halfback draws or screen trap games and stuff like that, end arounds, they'll find a way to work him in. He'll make a big impact every week, but I don't think his stats are necessarily going to be consistent.
Going to swing over to talking about the pass catchers real quick before we go over to talking a little bit more about the defense, particularly the front seven, and answering some questions. So last night we had Jeremy Curley had a very standard Jeremy Curley catch, 20 yards, little slant route, picked up some yards. Greg Salas continued on what's been a strong summer by all accounts. Looked really nice. Geno hit him on a 20-yard slant route and later had another catch underneath where he slipped a couple tackles. Stephen Hill, personal foul, dropped a pass over the middle, and then bounced back and had a really nice grab on a 3rd and 16 where he found a soft spot in the zone, caught the ball with his hands. Happy to give him all the credit in the world when he makes a play like that. Am I still happy with the way he's played this summer? No. Do I still think he's firmly on the roster bubble? Yes. And I just don't understand the kind of line of thinking among some fans where we're going out of their way to make excuses for him. Was it an easy catch? No. The catch the ball, it hit you between the 8 and the 4. You have to take hits over the middle in the NFL. It's not on Geno. That ball hit him right in the gut. He needs to catch it, and he needs to not be throwing personal fouls because he doesn't bring enough to the offense at this point to be sacrificing 15-yard penalties. So particularly with Salas playing well, he could very well be on the roster bubble, much more so than I thought he was. And I am obviously not the biggest fan of Hill, but every time I picked the Jets roster, I do think he was going to make the final 53. And, gun to my head today, I do still think he probably makes that final 53, but I would say going into this Giants game, it's much more closer to a 50-50 toss-up. Beyond them, I thought Amaro played well. He had 2 nice catches over the middle where he showed a little yak. One of them got called back on a completion from Vic, but the one from Geno for 17 yards did a real nice job kind of finding the window again against the zone and getting upfield after it. And it's just when you see him running in the open field like that, it's just an element this offense has been lacking for a long time. And it was good to see the Jets in the passing game kind of spreading the ball around and doing well, keeping in mind that they didn't have Eric Decker last night. They didn't have Jeff Cumberland last night. So they found a way to kind of spread it around, and I think Nelson had 2 catches as well. And then, when we got down to the backups, even Clyde Gates himself, the legend, the man, the myth, caught a 17-yard touchdown. I don't care if he catches 17-yard touchdowns against the Giants next week. He shouldn't get a roster spot, but good for Clyde. Maybe he'll catch on somewhere else. Connor, I'll start with you. How many wide receivers do you keep if you're doing roster cuts tomorrow, and who are the guys who are on the final 53?
I'd like to keep 6, but the only problem with that is that I would like to keep 4 running backs. So and that's not even counting a fullback. So it becomes a pick and choose 'em thing. I guess I'll just name 5 right now that I would keep, since I would like to keep 6, but I really think, and for whatever reason, they're going to run with one of these fullbacks, and it's probably going to be Bohannon, who, I'm not overly critical with him. I just feel like he doesn't really do much blocking game, and I feel like he doesn't really do enough in the passing game to warrant a roster spot, but I know they're going to keep him, so I'm not even going to try to challenge that right now, and I would assume that Darrell Richardson, Chris Johnson, Chris Ivory, and Bilal Powell are all locks. So say we do keep 5 wide receivers. Yeah, you have to obviously lock in Decker and Curley. Shaq's going to the IR. That's a given. Anunwa, I like the guy a lot, but I think he's just definitely going to be a practice squad player. Hopefully nobody snatches him up. So you got Eric Decker, Jeremy Curley, Saunders, obviously 4th-round pick, primary punt returner. We got to follow along what happened with this car accident situation, because I haven't seen anything besides a lot of weird details about it. So hopefully he's okay, because he's not out of the hospital last time I checked. But you have Saunders as a lock, David Nelson probably a lock, and right now I would keep Greg Salas. I think he's the perfect backup for Jeremy Curley, who needs a backup. This is a guy that missed 4 games last year, and the style of play, he's not a big guy, but he does everything you ask him, and you love Jeremy Curley, but he has a prominent role in this offense with Marty Morningweg's West Coast offense, and he needs a primary backup. And Jalen Saunders isn't ready to be that backup in the wide receiving game right now. He needs to develop those skills over the next 2 years. So I say bring Greg Salas on board and let him be that primary backup. And you could always run out double slots with Jeremy Curley and Salas, which I really like, especially if Marl's development is taking a little more time than you'd want. So those are my 5 guys that I would keep. And just to throw this in, there is no reason to keep Jacoby Ford on the roster to be the kick returner, because how many kick returns have we seen? And the guy brings nothing in the receiving game, so I don't even want to consider him right now.
Amen. Well said. I mean, to return 2 kicks every 5 games, and unless he's Devin Hester in his prime,
which he's not.
Yeah, use the roster spot elsewhere. We already, as you're talking about, it's going to be tough with the running backs. Do you keep 4? It's going to be tough at receiver. Do you keep 6? Can't be giving a spot to a guy who is only going to be a kick returner. Never mind, he's not also returning punts and not going to contribute on offense. Dalvin, you're probably the biggest, I guess would say, Stephen Hill defender or Stephen Hill person in favor of Stephen Hill on our staff.
I am.
What do you want to see from Hill against the Giants next week? Like, in terms of specifics, I mean, what are you disappointed with what you saw from him for 2 weeks? Are we being too hard on him? What do you got?
Oh, I'm ridiculously disappointed in Stephen Hill because of the fact that, and it's the same song and dance, right? He's had this amazing, the training camp was amazing, and he's looked great in practice. Gino went out of his way to defend him last week, saying that he has good hands. I felt like Gino was lying to me. I'm ridiculously disappointed in him, because even the one catch he had last night, that's fine. But I'm with you. If the ball hits you in your stomach, haul it in. Don't worry about the hit. And so he always seems to play like a smaller receiver. And Connor and I touched on this on Friday when we had met up. He's a massive receiver. He is 6'4", 230 pounds or something like that. He's a big guy, but he plays like he's 5'9". Like, he's always looking for the hit. He looks like those old Rams receivers that they just catch it and hit the ground. Like, it's weird for me, man. Like, and the Giants have, I think the Giants have one of the more overrated secondaries. So even if he comes out on Friday night and goes for 6 catches, 120 yards, I'm still going to think you need to cut him, because Greg Salas right now gives you more. And Greg Salas got picked up, around week 5 or 6? And since then, he's given you more than Stephen Hill has in the 2 years that he's been here, minus the games against the Buffalo Bills. So there's nothing that I can see from him that makes me say, yeah, I think we need to keep you. Nothing. Like, I'm done with Stephen Hill, Joe. There will not be no more pro Stephen Hill articles on the site. I promise you.
We gotta have something like Stephen Hill.
I'm done.
I'm getting scorched in the comment section.
No. But you know what it is? Because it's so frustrating with him because he, like, even the one catch he had, I thought that was great, right? But it's like, okay, so you found a soft spot in the zone. That's what you should do. That's what most good receivers do. They find a soft spot, catch it with their hands. Why are we celebrating you doing the things that all the good receivers should do? It just does. Those are routine things for a receiver, and he doesn't do the routine things well. And that bothers me with him.
Cole, what did you think about Amaro last night, and how big of a role do you think he's kind of ready to take on out of the gate from week one? And I know we talk about, the receiver situation a lot, but again, the Jets have three guys in Amaro, Cumberland, and Sudfeld who are going to be split out a lot and be used in ways that receivers are normally used. So I guess more specifically focusing down on Amaro and Sudfeld, what are your expectations for them kind of early in the season? I know Amaro's a rookie and making a pretty big transition, but he's looked pretty smooth once we've gotten to the preseason games.
I actually see their roles similar to how I see the running backs' roles. I think they all have very specific skill sets that will be schemed for. What I liked out of Amaro in particular this week was his blocking out of the backfield. I saw him lined up as a fullback on a few plays. I can't remember the specific play, but he laid out a Bengals defensive lineman and helped seal the edge and got Chris Johnson to the outside, which is like key from that position. And to have a tight end that can play that sort of H-back role, the Jets haven't had that in ages. They wanted that with Chris Baker, but that was never going to be anything. And hopefully they have that now. And he's clearly shown that he can contribute in the passing game. As far as out of the gate, probably not too much. It looks like he still needs some working in. He's probably good for like 1 or 2 receptions a week, similar to what we saw this week. Big down-the-seam, chains-moving catches with a little yak tacked on at the end. I've liked what I've seen from Sudfeld in practice and somewhat in games, but he doesn't really seem to be making an impact. I haven't looked closely at the tape from the preseason yet to see if it's an issue with getting open or if it's an issue with just not getting the targets or not being given routes that would allow him to get open, putting him in a position to succeed. But like I said last year in our tight end rankings, he's the best run blocking tight end they have on the roster. As I said before, Amaro's getting there, but Sudfeld is still, your best option to put on the outside to help a tackle out. So, I think you'll see all of them on the field at once. I think you'll see Amaro in on a lot of passing situations. I think you could see situations where you have Bohannon, Amaro, and Sudfeld in sort of a pseudo-jumbo package. I think they have a lot of different ways that they can use this tight end group, and I'm actually pretty excited. And I think back to what you had asked Connor earlier, I think that this will actually be key in deciding how many receivers they keep, because all three of them can be effective receivers. Cumberland has had issues with drops in the past. Amaro had struggles in early camp, but he's been coming on as of late, and Sudfeld hauls in everything thrown his way. So you have essentially 3 large receivers, and then after Decker and Curley, not many people are going to see targets. And yeah, Salas, that's a great point, Connor, is a very important backup to Curley, who, when he missed time, it was very, very noticeable. But I
think they were 0-4, weren't they?
They were 0-4 with Curley out of the lineup.
Yeah,
and that was part of Gino's massive slump. And I still think that was a major reason, because you took away his only reliable receiver at the time.
Yeah.
And I think Cumberland was out for 2 of those games as well, which didn't help. But yeah, just to finish off, the tight ends are essentially going to function as receivers and also have a hybrid blocking role, and I think Marty is going to find a good way to scheme them into this offense.
All right, boys, we got 15 minutes left. We're going to go rapid fire here. So quick answers. We're going to rip through some of these Twitter questions, and then I want to shout out some particular Twitter accounts that you guys think Jet fans really should be following during games, throughout the week. Shout out whoever you want. But let's rip through these questions first. First 2, we have one from Simon K. and also from Alex Wildish. Simon's handle is _6S6K6, and Alex's is A_Wildish18. They both had very similar questions, so we're going to lump them together. Simon asked, how will Pryor impact the Jets secondary? Alex asked, Can Pryor have as big as an impact in coverage as he will around the line of scrimmage? We'll go right down the line. I'll go real first. I think Pryor immediately changed the game when he came in last night, which was very exciting to see someone kind of live up to that hype. He completed a guy, forced an incompletion. He recovered a fumble. He broke up a play in the backfield. Really exciting and encouraging to see that. I think Rex Ryan's going to ask him to do a lot in coverage, while I do think he'll be active in the Jets' blitz package and run support. But the Jets will lean on him to kind of roam in a free safety role. So I think he could be a guy who ends up with a handful of interceptions in his rookie year. Dalbin, go. 30 seconds, go.
I think Pryor is key. I think he's going to be key, especially because I think Rex is going to utilize a lot of zones. I don't think he's going to use a lot of man-to-man early on, and I think Pryor is going to be key for that, covering the deep safety, much more in pass coverage than in run support. But he was exciting. I was very happy to see him last night.
Sorry, just had to plug in my laptop. Connor, 30 seconds, go.
All right. On Pryor, he's everything advertised. Makes a bunch of big hits, makes plays in the backfield. Rex loves blitzing his safeties, which he can do. He's not going to be Ed Reed in coverage, but the guy can roam sideline to sideline. He has a good nose for the ball. So it's definitely going to really impact this defense in a way that fans haven't seen in the Rex Ryan era.
He better not be Ed Reed in coverage after what we saw last year. Cole, 30 seconds, go.
Speaking of Ed Reed, I was actually having this argument on Twitter the other day about Pryor's coverage potential. I think from what I saw of his college tape and even what I saw a little bit of last night, even though he wasn't trusted with too much coverage, he definitely has the speed, the quickness, and the lateral agility to be a good deep cover safety. I'm sure he'll be deployed there more than Antonio Allen, who we know struggles in zone but excels in man. I think he'll spend a lot of time in the box, and I think, this is probably a little too high of expectations to set in true Rex Ryan grandiose fashion, but I think he gives you a little bit of the best of what Ed Reed provides and Troy Polamalu provides, but probably a poor man's version of that.
All right. Next question was from Eric Allen, #Allen Sauce. Very clever, like that. He said, I'm sorry, his handle is Allen Sauce, not his hashtag. Said, do you think Ellis Langster could truly hold down the number 2 cornerback spot against the QBs we face early on? I think Langster played pretty well last night. I think he struggled when asked to do more a few years ago. I think it was 2012. He got a lot of playing time on defense. I'm not ready to, crown him as a competent outside starter yet, but as of right now, it looks like Rex is leaning to him more than Walls. Right now, I have to see it first. I think he could probably hold his own against Oakland. I think he would probably struggle very much against Green Bay and Chicago and Detroit, but hopefully if he's out there, Rex is giving him the appropriate help over the top. Dalbin, Ellis Langster, go.
Same thing as you, Joe. I have to see it. I think Walls would be better on the outside. I think they can win with Walls and Langster on the outside against Oakland. Against Green Bay, where he would have to be matched up with either Randall Cobb, Jordy Nelson, Jared Boykin. That's too tough a matchup for him, in my opinion. So I would have to see it. I don't think he can hold down the other 4 through that gauntlet of passers. Sorry, Cole. Sorry.
Connor, go ahead.
No shot. There's no way. We've seen him on the outside. I like the guy. I think he's a great special teams player, but I'm not going to sit here and market him to you like he's the next Darrelle Revis, and I don't think he belongs on the outside. He is what he is. Ellis Island will not be unleashed.
Very catchy hashtag. Cole, your boy.
As the director of the Ellis Langster hype train, I feel...
Well, I think there's somebody else there who might be the director of the Ellis Langster hype train.
He who shall not be named right now. I do like Langster, and I like his potential on the outside. I don't like his long-term potential on the outside. I don't think he's going to stick as a starter in this defense. I don't think he's going to be the answer opposite Milner. But I think in the interim, I think Rex Ryan can scheme using Patterson, Langster, and Milner to make an effective secondary.
All right. Should clarify, we're not saying there's anything wrong with Ellis Langster. I've actually very much liked the article that Jake wrote on Vice Sports about Ellis. That was a really good read. So we're not trying to take.
I live on the Ellis Langster Vice.
We are friends to all blogs. Next question was from Knicks Loyalty, also a very good avid tweeter for us to turn on the Knicks. His handle is Forever Shin In. He said, cornerback help. What solid CBs around the league may get cut that we could pounce on? That is a really good question, and one that I'm asked throughout the week, and I don't have a specific name. I think the Jets will probably look towards who gets cut in maybe Cleveland or Kansas City in spots they run somewhat similar to the Jets, but I think the thought that some veteran's going to come in here and like save the day is probably incorrect. It's going to be Connor's right. You got to keep your notebooks handy for this. It's going to be up to the internal guys on the Jets to really hold the fort until Milner's back. So I'm not really too over hopeful for outside help. Connor, I'll actually skip Dalvin. You could talk about your unleash the dream thing right there. Caught me off guard. I'm stumbling here. Thoughts on veteran cornerbacks that the Jets could pursue?
Yeah, if you're gonna keep a guy just to return kicks, it's got to be the dream. That's all that needs to be said.
Fair. Any veteran quarterbacks worth that jump off the page you think could get cut in the next couple of weeks?
No. With corner depth in this league, if a team's cutting a guy at cornerback, he's either one, just really young and they don't have room for him on the roster, but probably hasn't shown a lot of promise. And in terms of veterans, any guy that's worth in this league right now, corner teams keep, unless his contract's out of control, and that's just not happening right now. So I don't see much coming in at cornerback with cuts for the Jets, unfortunately.
Dalvin?
I was thinking Jonathan Joseph, but I don't think the Texans cut him. I thought that if the Jets were going to make a move to get him, it would have had to be before the draft. I think it's going to be a lot of scheme stuff. I think Rex is going to run a lot of zones, similar to how he beat Brady and Manning, where he just flooded the field with just DBs and tried to trusted the pass rush to get them. I think it's going to be schematic. I don't think it's going to be outside help coming in to help the cornerbacks.
Cole, cornerbacks.
The first thing I do because I was thinking the same thing, I look for cornerback-heavy teams. And funny enough, I think the team that's probably deepest at cornerback in the NFL right now, or potential talent deep, is the Bengals. They got Darqueze Dennard in the draft. They have Leon Hall starting. They have Dre Kirkpatrick from a few years ago. Adam Pac-Man Jones. They have Terrence Newman. They have R.J. Stanford.
Wow.
I think any one of those last three I named have a chance to get cut. Specifically, I think Stanford and Newman are on the roster bubble there. I don't know how much of an upgrade either of them present at this point. I haven't been watching them recently, but I know Terrence Newman has had success in this league, and I liked R.J. Stanford when I saw tape on him.
All right, next question we have from Chris Minotti. His handle is CMINOTTS. He said, what do you think it will take for Salas to grab the last wide receiver roster spot from Hill? We kind of touched on this earlier. I would say it's probably 50-50 at this point. As from what I saw last night, Salas looks to be just a little smoother, a little more natural as a receiver, particularly in this offense. I think if Salas goes out and has a very big night against the Giants and plays well against the Eagles and Hill continues to be inconsistent, makes a couple drops, maybe a couple more penalties, maybe, and again, this would still be a very surprising move if the Jets cut Hill. Maybe then Salas can knock him off. Dalvin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if Salas keeps playing the way he's playing and Hill keeps playing the way he's playing, then Salas is going to make the team and Hill's not. You're talking about a guy I'm a firm believer that Curley's going to start on the outside opposite of Decker, and Salas is the perfect guy in the slot if that's the formation you're going to go with, because like we touched on, the tight ends are going to catch passes, the running backs are going to touch passes. Salas fits in the slot for what Marty wants to do. So as long as he keeps doing what he's doing and Hill keeps doing what he's doing, I think Salas is the one that's going to make the roster and not Hill.
Connor?
Yeah, no, I definitely I'm on the Greg Salas hype train right now. So I've always defended Stephen Hill, and I really hope he gets things together. But right now, when you look at Salas's role on this team, it's a defined role. Meanwhile, with Hill, you're just kind of waiting on this hopeless stretch that he breaks out. So I'm definitely I'm on the Salas hype train right now, and I think he makes the team. Like I said, he has a role. So
Cole.
I don't think it takes very much at all. I think if it comes down to between the two of them, and if Idzik's competition mantra means anything, it should be Salas. But I think they carry 6 wide receivers and stick with Salas and Hill.
I was going to write Salas hype train, but my marker died. I'm out of paper. Throw out that hashtag later.
Tracks right now. We should calm down.
Real quick, Zach Burns with Z_Burns_24. We touched on your question earlier. I didn't get to speak to it, so just real quick, he said, how many touches do you expect each running back to get per game? I think Cole broke it down pretty well. I think it's going to be very game plan specific. I would say at the end of the year, I think Chris Ivory will lead the Jets in rushing yards, but Chris Johnson will lead all running backs in total offensive yards. While Bilal Powell, it's hard to know exactly what his exact role will be week to week. I think it's going to vary a lot depending on the health of the people in front of him and depending on the game, but he will be involved. And we saw last night all the different things he can do. Anything that any of you three guys want to say about the running back position before we quickly throw out some other handles we think Jet fans should be following? Speak now, forever hold your peace.
I mean, I think Cole broke it down, and like for me, I think it's a little bit higher. I think you're looking at 14 carries for Ivory, 11 carries for Chris Johnson, and 9 for Bilal. I think they're good. I think it's still going to be a team that
plus or minus.
Because I do think that they're going to run the ball much more than people assume. I think everybody assumes that it's going to be Geno Unchained, and I get that. I do think that it's going to be a team that still runs the ball primarily, and those 3 running backs give them free. Yes, yes. We have to talk about him because this kid is a freak. What is it? 2 strip sacks in the last 2 weeks. I'm so impressed with this kid.
Just for a
yeah, the guy plays 4 snaps a game and has the most turnovers in the preseason.
You make plays. You make plays.
Just for the, I think we might.
Did we lose Joe?
I think we might have lost Joe.
Okay.
Did we?
Well,
All right,
free
I think we
IK.
get a couple strip sacks.
Oh, there we go.
He returns.
Speak to it, Connor. You held it up.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy
Speak about IK.
that I didn't even watch pre-draft that much because I just didn't even know if he would be drafted. I thought he was just a late day 3 guy, and he ends up he's a bull rusher. He's a one-trick pony, more or less. He runs right at you, and if you're not strong enough to throw him back, which most people haven't been in the third-string units, he's going to bulldoze right through you and either kill the quarterback or the punter. So good luck to any third-string unit to face this guy.
Yeah, I think Ick might be playing himself onto this roster. He's been really impressive.
I think so.
Weeks. And I held up my Ed Sanity sign because I could get my AJ Eads mention in here. Eads, Eds, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong anyway, but when he makes a team, I'll lock it down. Real quick, we got 2 minutes left. Shout out 1 or 2 handles that you think all Jet fans should be following. I'm going to go with at FBB Chase, Football Perspective. Pretty big site, but he's actually been a really good follow during games. I didn't follow him last season for whatever reason, but really have enjoyed following him throughout the first 2 Jet preseason games. Dalbin, go ahead.
2 guys that I think Jets fans should follow is at C Nimbley's. Nimbley's the god, man. I like his stuff. He's a very good writer. You guys should already be following him. And if you want to lose your mind, you should follow at Patriots SB49, right? Because he's gonna drive you nuts. But you know what? I think sometimes people mistake his trolling. Like I think he's DM'd me before. He likes the Jets. He likes Geno. But I think a lot of people fall victim to his troll job. So if you want to lose your mind, you can follow him.
Yes, they do. Don't fall into his trolling trap.
Don't.
Connor?
All right, this is kind of an obvious one, but I'm going to give out Mike O'Connor's handle, the Turn On Jets writer.
The OC.
At Jets_content for 2 reasons. 1, he was the only one that said Greg Salas has a good chance of making this team months ago. 2, he said Kyle Wilson actually sucks and everyone needs to shut up, and he proved it in an article, and he's right. So that's why I give Mike O'Connor.
The OC.
That is well said, and perfect time for me to hold up from the beginning of the show, the bad wag.
Bad wag.
I don't care what metric you show me, Kyle Wilson is not a good NFL cornerback, and he can prove me right on a week-to-week basis when I hope he'll start proving me wrong because the Jets need all the help a corner they could get. Cole, go ahead.
My guy's Matt Miller. He's at NFL Draft Scout. Very informed, knows his football, talks about every team, so maybe not Jets-specific. But he's really talented, knows his stuff, and he's very interactive with his followers. I also like Corey Griffin at CGriffin415. More Jets-specific, definitely watches every Jets game goes through with a fine-tooth comb. But he also does a lot of other NFL things. I like his takes. They're pretty moderate. How I don't like the heat.
Handle with care.
Corey's a really good follow. I definitely agree. As is everybody else that you guys all mentioned. 8:15, we're done. We all got to get ready. We got another fun week of work coming up. On the YouTube channel, we should have some more highlight tapes. We did film some of our X's and O's stuff over the weekend. I hope to get more of that stuff out. I appreciate James Corbett taking the time to film on Friday. We will sync that up and get it done as a group of TOJ writers in the coming weeks. And obviously subscribe because we're going to be giving away tickets, signed Jets, swag, and stuff. We're lucky that we got access to a bunch of it for this year. So we're going to be trying to push some people to the YouTube channel for that. And stay with us all week as we'll be covering. Everybody say their quick goodbyes. Quick 5-second goodbye, Dalvin.
TOJ.
Connor looks like his.
Cut Quigley. Cut Quigley. That's all I got.
Cole.
Don't cut Anunwa.
All right. I don't know that. You know, I got nothing. Just catch the ball, Stephen Hill. Catch the ball, man, and I'll stop criticizing. Thanks. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. Keep following us to Turn the Jets. Enjoy your Sunday night. Watch your leftovers. Stay with the show. I'm a fan still. And we'll see everybody next week.
TOJ.